This video will discuss solving quadratics with the quadratic formula. I would recommend taking notes as it will be helpful as you prepare for your quiz and test in the upcoming weeks. So now that we've getting back from break for a few weeks, we're going to spend some time first before we get into this concept of doing some review. So I'm going to give you a few questions and I want you to identify which form is standard form, which is factored form, and which is vertex form. So hopefully you identified those three forms correctly. We'll now go over those because we will be using at least one of them in this video. So standard form, we have a x squared plus bx plus c equals y. Okay, so remember this is just our basic form. We have x squared, x, and a number, and that equals y. Factored form, that is where we have two groups or factors multiplied by each other. So we have x plus m, x plus n equals y. Okay, we put these into factors that we multiply together. And then vertex form, that's where we have our a times x minus h squared plus k equals y. Okay, and then that will give us the vertex of our parabola, which will be at h comma k. Now, I also want to talk about solution methods. Okay, so we'll go with our preferred solution method. This might be a good idea to keep in mind going forward. Okay, now I'm going to leave this first one blank since we've not solved directly from standard form yet. That's what this is going to go through. Factored form, we're going to set factors equal to 0 and solve. And here we're going to use square roots for vertex form. Okay, and now standard form, we can either graph or the quadratic formula. Okay, so we're going to learn the quadratic formula in this video, and the quadratic formula is really quite simple. Okay, you're just going to plug numbers into a formula, do some simplifying, and there you go, you've got an answer. Okay, so we'll get to that in a minute. I want to do a little bit more review first. If you don't remember how to solve by graphing, setting factors equal to 0 and solving and using square roots, I would recommend watching some of those videos from December. All right, so once again, we're doing some more review. How many solutions may a quadratic have? So there are three possibilities here. We either have no solution. Okay, you could have said 0. One solution. So touches the x-axis. Or two solutions where it will cross the x-axis. Okay? Now let's go to this other one. Three other names for solutions to quadratic equations. All right, those are called zeros, roots, and x-intercepts. Hopefully we remember this from last semester. If not, we need to remember this because it will be on our next quiz and it will be on our next test. And it will come up during the rest of the year. Now we're going to go ahead and get on to our new stuff, which we'll go real quick through because it is fairly simple. Okay, I wouldn't necessarily call it easy, but it is simple. Okay, so we have this cool formula called the quadratic formula. Okay, now this tells us that for any equation, so if we have ax squared plus bx plus c equals, what must it equal? 0. Then x equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, now for those of you who are curious, it is derived by completing the square, which is why completing the square is my favorite method to use. Now, we're going to go ahead and use this equation. I want to point out a couple things first. The first thing, this plus or minus, that means you can break this down. If you are too confused by that, if you're like, this plus or minus, I don't feel comfortable using that plus or minus, you can make two equations. You know that x equals negative b plus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, or x equals negative b minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. These are the same. This and I write it as one equation, this I write it as two. That's fine. Okay? I'll do a problem with both of them. Okay? Now, the one key that I have to drill every year is that the sign in front of a coefficient will stay with your coefficient. So we're going to have to use parentheses. All right, so this, I will say this, the equation, you'll always be given that equation. Now, hopefully with time, as you see it more often, you'll have it memorized, but you will always be given that equation in class and on the EOC. All right, so let's start with a simple one. So we'll say that y equals x squared plus 2x minus 5. Okay, so we have to identify a, b, and c. Okay, ax squared plus bx plus c. So first off, we know that y has to equal 0. Then we have a equals, that one's a bit tricky, 1. B equals 2. C equals negative 5. Now, I've got a formula, and I'm not afraid to use it. Let's go ahead and plug in with what we've got. We're going to do this one broken down for the first one, and then we'll just combine on our next example. Okay, so here's my first possibility. Okay, so we have x equals negative b plus square root b squared minus 4 times a times c. Notice how everything is in parentheses. All over 2a. And then we have the other one. Negative 2 minus square root of 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 5 all over 2 times 1. Now, when we simplify, we must simplify 3 places. In the denominator, the left of the addition sign, and inside the radical. If you want to go further, that's all well and good, but we must simplify this place, and this place. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so x equals negative times 2. That's just going to be negative 2 there. Plus, and I'm going to take a few steps to get this inside done. So we have 4 minus, now 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times negative 5 is negative 20. Negative times negative, we'll keep it like that. So negative 20 over 2. Okay, now I'm going to keep going. X equals negative 2 plus square root of 4 plus 20 over 2. X equals negative 2 plus square root of 24 over 2. That's one solution. Now we have our second solution. So x equals negative 2 minus 4 minus negative 20. Keep that in parentheses. Over 2. X equals negative 2 minus 4 plus 20 over 2. X equals negative 2 minus square root of 24 over 2. Now, what do we notice about these two answers? Everything's the same except that this is plus and this is minus. So we could have just used this formula up here. Okay, but if you feel more comfortable splitting it up, by all means do that. Okay, I want you to do what you feel comfortable with. Okay, if this works better now, and over time you get more comfortable and you're like, oh, this makes more sense to me, now I'm going to start using it. Go ahead and do that. If it takes time, that's fine. All right, now we're going to step it up a notch, but we're still going to use that formula. Okay, so we're really not changing things up a whole lot. We're going to use that every single time we want to solve with the quadratic formula. So let's go ahead with this problem here. Okay, y equals negative 3x squared minus 2x plus 1. All right, so we should first do what? Y equals 0 for us to solve it. Minus 3x squared minus 2x plus 1. I'm going to keep drilling this as well. Okay, because we always need to know that. When we solve a quadratic, y equals 0. So a is the number in front of the x squared, negative 3. B is the number in front of x, negative 2. Keep those negative signs. Keep those negative signs. And then c is the number at the end, 1. Okay, so look, we've got a formula with A, B, and C, and we have A, B, and C. Let's go ahead and plug them in. Okay, we've got a formula, and we're not afraid to use it. So, I'm going to change colors. I'm going to do just one equation this time. So we have x equals negative B. Now notice how I'm using those parentheses. This is why we have to use parentheses. If I had $1 for every time this was messed up, I could retire yesterday. Okay? Now, we have negative times negative 2 plus or minus square root b squared. So we put that in parentheses, squared, minus 4 times negative 3 in parentheses, times 1 in parentheses. Even though it's 1 and we just multiply by 1, I want to see it there. Okay? Because if it were not 1, I don't want us to make mistakes. And then we have 2 all over 2a, 2 times negative 3. So once again, we got to simplify in 3 places. Here, here, and here. Okay? So, x equals negative times negative 2. That's a positive 2. Plus or minus, here we have square root of 4. Negative 4 times negative 3 times 1 makes plus 12 over negative 6. So we have x equals 2 plus or minus square root 16 over negative 6. Oh, we know square root of negative 16. Let's go ahead and just simplify that. Okay, so we have x equals 2 plus or minus 4 over negative 6. So now I'm going to break it down again. Okay, so we're going to have x equals 2 plus 4 over negative 6. X equals 2 minus 4 over negative 6. So this is going to equal 6 over negative 6, which equals negative 1. It's going to equal negative 2 over negative 6, which equals 1/3. Now, you have a few questions to answer regarding the quadratic formula. You're going to solve a couple problems using that method. And as you're doing that, I'll be checking your answers and seeing if we need to talk about this some more.